Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday morning to you all. I hope you guys are waking up and feeling good out there this morning, having a wonderful start to your day, and a great week out there so far. We got some things to cover in this morning's video, and the big question is, what's next? We know what's going to happen over the next few days left in January, but what about February? February can be a wild month. We can have wild swings. It can be severe weather one week, and then a winter storm the next. March is kind of similar especially when we get closer to the changing of the seasons from winter to spring. But February, definitely still a solid winter month. But are we going to have widespread winter weather and cold, or is it going to be widespread warmth? Who's going to see what? We're still trying to answer those questions. But as we continue to progress forward day by day, our confidence is going to, swing one way or the other on whatever is next. So we're going to go over all the latest information that we have. We'll discuss the latest from the Climate Prediction Center first on temperatures and precipitation between now and the next 14 days. We'll go over all model guidance from overnight into this morning. And then we'll discuss a little bit on how complex the pattern is to really figure out. I say complex, but we don't even know what's going to really happen as we have blocking up in Alaska. What is that going to do, or lack of blocking in Alaska? And basically what I'm trying to say is we're getting a lot of flip-flopping on the long range as far as model guidance. These long range runs, of course, we always get flip-flopping, right? But we're seeing a lot of it right now. So we'll speak on what we know and what we don't know. We'll do all that. And then, of course, we're going to cover today's forecast. And we'll spend a little extra time on that, especially for the Northeast and even the upper Midwest, as we'll zoom into some of these graphics for individual areas. As I do think, even though other areas are taking a break from winter weather, areas like the Northeast, the Great Lakes region, certainly are not. So we'll speak on that. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So this is the latest 6 to 10 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. I believe this takes us from the 2nd to the 6th of February. It does. So no need to get very detailed on this. If you live in the red area, orange area, and even in that light orange area, they're going for above average temperatures, the chance at above average temperatures in that time frame. So the first several days of February most likely will feature temperatures that are above your average conditions for this time of the year temperature-wise. So the whole entire southern tier of the country basically is going to get that. Now you get up here to the northern sections of the country, like the Northeast, it's leaning towards below average temperatures. Around 40% chance in this lighter shade of blue, 33 here. But the confidence is highest up here. In this dark blue, that's an 80% chance in Montana, portions of Montana, of temperatures being below average. But what you'll notice is this section of Montana is 80% chance, but you go down here to like southwestern Montana, even the extreme areas of southwestern Montana or southern areas of the state, only a 40% chance. And I'm going to talk about why kind of there's such a tight gradient in confidence here in a second. So you do got the kind of the battleground between, around, you could lean towards above average temperatures, maybe slightly below average temperatures. So we're still trying to figure out where that battleground sets up between warmer and colder temperatures. But this is the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. This is the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook. A good chunk of the country is going to lean towards above average precipitation. Now, just because you see green, that doesn't mean rain. It could mean winter weather. In fact, for a lot of areas across the northern Rockies, it will mean winter weather. But leaning towards drier than average now in this time frame for the Southeast and areas of the southern Rockies and the Southwest. What about the 8 to 14 day outlook? This is starting to get deeper into February. This takes us from, what does this take us? The 4th through the 10th. So this takes up a good 1/3 of February just about, or even more. And it looks very similar, right? The below average temperatures do begin to kind of ooze more in the central U.S. and more east. But the same thing kind of continues for the southern tier of the country, leaning towards above average temperatures. In fact, confidence is pretty high once you get into the Southeast, down to Florida, 70-60% chance of temperatures being above average. And still pretty good confidence up here with temperatures being below average into the northern Rockies, the northern plains, the Pacific Northwest, the western U.S., an area of the country that hasn't had much of a winter so far. And in precipitation, most of the country is going to either be at around average precipitation this time period, the 6-day window or either slightly above average precipitation. There's a 40% chance of that in this darker green, 33% chance of that in the lighter green. So that is the outlook between now and the next 14 days. Now, I think there's going to be some changes with this. In fact, if you remember, once upon a time, it had below average temperatures showing up all the way down into Texas. Now they've switched it to above average temperatures. So let's talk about storm systems. It's the latest GFS from this morning. Between now and the next, I would say 5 to 6 days, we're pretty confident on that. There is going to be a storm system for specific areas. Now, we're still going to try to tweak the actual precipitation type, but there's going to be a storm system, and we'll talk about those as we go. So starting off tomorrow morning, here's our upper low that continues. We've been talking about this on and off over the last several days. Here goes another clipper that's already moving out of Canada right now to the Great Lakes region to the northeast. This will continue just to bring rounds of snow, heavy at times, and this will fire up some of the lake effect snows, and then we'll start to get into tomorrow evening. You see all this green here in Texas. That could bring a little bit of severe weather, which we'll talk about here in a second. And then as we start to get into Thursday, whatever's left of this system begins to tap into a better cold air source to the north. It kind of creates its own cold air source here with this pocket of cold air aloft. And this system sort of just continues to move north. We're going to have some rainy times as we're waking up Friday morning. Timestamps are up here. 12Z Friday, that's Friday morning, and right over here. It's the last morning of January. Seems like January just went on forever. It seems like it always does. But we start to get into Friday afternoon, and this is where a big question mark kind of sets up here. A couple days ago, it was looking like that even a day ago, it was looking like southern New England could get a quick-hitting winter storm, but this is trending a little bit warmer on models, and it really keeps the swath of accumulating winter weather further to the north and interior sections of the New England area, and then southern Ontario, and even has this swath of snow, like rain switching to snow even down to Detroit, and then this heads on off, but it no longer shows a big winter storm for like Boston Point south. So you move past this. We know this storm system is going to sweep across the country over the next few days, all the way into this weekend, right? We're still trying to figure out some things to the northeast as far as this being a high impact winter storm. Now, as we start to move to the end of this weekend, we have another clipper that swings through the Great Lakes region and into the northeast. I don't think we're going to have any shortage of snow for certain areas of the Great Lakes region and the interior sections of the northeast. But then the question marks really show up as far as where is the cold air, heck, even like 5 days from now, 5 to 6 days. It wants to show this 540 line that begins to tilt kind of northwest to southeast, and that tells me that cold air is kind of just zipping on through here. We'll kind of draw on this for a second. Cold air is kind of, there's some sort of boundary right in here, and cold air is kind of moving this way, and this is mainly warm air down here. Now, how far south, north is that boundary going to be? Not quite sure, but we continue, and we'll get a pool of moist air from the south and the Gulf that begins to work its way across the middle of the country between day 7 and 10. So we're all the way into February 5th at this point. And, are we going to get some sort of overrunning event day 9, day 10, 6th, 5th, 7th of February? Not sure. And then we start to get the day 10, and it just becomes an unreliable time frame. We're getting energy moving off the Pacific into this cold air. And, we get past day 10, unreliable time frame, and then we start to see cutters, meaning low pressures are cutting across the country, but you don't see anything that sticks out to you, at least between now and the next 10 days. We get past day 10, which we're going to get a lot of flip-flopping with. That's when the big question marks come. We got enough questions to figure out, to answer between now and the next 10 days. What about after day 10? Cold air on the latest GFS wants to sag enough south to get a winter storm going across the middle of the country, eventually into the northeast. But even that is kind of just a cutter look. And the cold air is still hanging out mainly over the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, the Northeast. There's not a lot of cold air getting down to the south. Now, what about the European model? Same thing. We got to watch the system that flies across the country. This is getting into this Thursday. This will bring a little severe weather opportunity for areas of Texas. Brings a whole lot of rain across the Mississippi Valley, into the Ohio Valley, the Mid-South. A little pocket of cold air aloft could bring maybe some rain mixing with snow across areas in the Midwest. And then it hits the cold air to the north, and there it is. There's that little feed of moisture well, I would say a lot of moisture feeding into a little bit of cold air to the on the northern side, 999 millibar low cutting across PA. That's not going to favor snow across the I-95 corridor. But on the northern fringe of this moisture, that's what I'm talking about. You got this heavy swath of snow. Where is this going to set up? On the Euro, it sets up over Chicago, over to Detroit. But for the Northeast, for the most part, it keeps snow confined to the interior sections of the Northeast, and then that heads out, and then we start to enter that kind of no man's land time frame where we don't know what's going to happen, and we get to the end of this weekend. I'm pretty confident on there being another clipper that flies across the Great Lakes region into later this weekend. Who knows? Maybe that'll turn into a stronger low. And then we get about a week out. I mean, we're all the way into like a week from right now. There's that little bit of a kind of a slanted zonal flow of cold air kind of filtering in. I mean, and this is a pretty strong high. There's very cold air right here, up here in this region, but it doesn't really get dislodged into the central U.S. anymore. In fact, a ridge takes over, builds and bubbles up, and there's that little bit of overrunning showing up at day 9 and 10. Big cutter going across the high plains, not the middle of the country, really the high plains, and then things get wild. Like the Euro really shows how wild this pattern can be coming up. You know, we get past day 10, 7th, 8th, 9th of February. Here comes a big punch of cold air that kind of dives into the eastern U.S. and doesn't do a whole lot of anything as far as snow for any unusual areas. And then at the very end of the run, we get a bigger shot of cold air that begins to dive in with a big winter storm. But then again, guys, that's 360 hours out, all the way out to the evening of February 11th. Very unreliable time frame. But, you know, something like this would bring a winter storm across the Midwest into the Great Lakes region. So what do you take from that? You don't take a whole lot of anything, because confidence is just, what I like to say, a fart in the wind after day 7. I mean, it's just not there. So not a whole lot you can take from that. But what we do know is, hey, there's a severe weather opportunity tomorrow across Texas, but hey, it's one of those uncommon downtrends. You know, yesterday, day before, we had a slight risk for Texas. Now for tomorrow, it's downgrade to a marginal risk. So the chances of widespread severe weather have dropped somewhat. This might, bump back up to a slight risk, but just a marginal risk, level 1 out of 5 for tomorrow across areas of Texas. So there's a risk of severe weather, and there is a small risk of a tornado down here north of Austin, kind of north of San Antonio, in this region right here. But there will be a risk of some damaging winds and a little bit of hail too, with some cold air aloft with this upper low. But in general, I mean, it doesn't look like a huge deal. Now we get to day 3. This has really shifted. And this is getting into Thursday. And, this, and I'm not surprised, because the Euro was showing this, it showed the ingredients really shifting to the east fast Thursday. But, it's crazy. We had a winter storm here a week ago, and 9 days later, we're going to have a severe weather episode. So level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather. So if you live in this yellow area, what that means at day 3 is it's just a 15% risk of severe weather. We don't know the exact details. There might be a 5% risk of a tornado issue, but this goes from Houston up to Alexandria, just south and east of Shreveport, all the way up to Monroe. And we're going to have some severe weather for sure in this area. This is typically an area to get some wild weather. It's been quiet for a while up to the historic winter storm that you guys just got. But yeah, so we're going to have to talk about this in more detail as we get closer over the next 24 hours. As far as the snow signal, what you'll notice here is you're going to see this. This is our upper low. It's going to bring some snow across the southern and central Rockies. And then we're going to see this. You're going to see kind of this continue just to reload and reload as snow continues to kind of come down out of Canada into the northern sections of the Great Lakes into the Northeast. So I know I got some loyal viewers up here in the UP of Michigan, for example, Lisa, Steven. And you guys are going to get no shortage of snow. It's just going to be round after round, because basically the jet is extended to the north. Therefore, you're kind of right in the main avenue of energy. But let's keep it going here. This is in 72-hour increments, so 3-day period. So you'll see blues disappear and then reappear. And here it goes. We get into like almost a week out. You can see the main avenue of snow is up here to the north in Canada around the US-Canadian border, and you can see there's a pretty solid signal for snow across the northern Rockies, the Pacific Northwest, the northern Sierra Nevada. But you can tell the Midwest as we get past day 7, and it's definitely the southern section of the country, no signal for snow whatsoever. Now we start to get to day 10, and things start to get a little bit louder. Past day 10, you start to get a louder signal for heavier snows, maybe a little bit further south. But it's still tough to figure out. Everything's still scattered and smothered out here. There's no solid signal anywhere. I'm not going to call this little bit of a signal right. I'm not going to call this little bit of a snow that you see in the Carolinas or the Virginia as a signal yet, because it's 300 hours out. It's hard to call that a signal. But there's obviously past day 10 something showing up for a pretty active pattern up here in the upper Midwest and the Midwestern portions of the country. It's just Cutter Central right now. There's nothing screaming anything further south right now. But I do want to take a closer look for my friends here in the Great Lakes region. It's between now and the next 10 days. And this isn't a snow forecast. It's just an ensemble run from the latest Euro ensemble. And, no shortage of snow up here in the UP, even northern lower Michigan. And there is a few inch snowfall average, even all the way down to like Detroit, lower Michigan, Chicago, a couple inch snowfall mean into Milwaukee. And then the northern sections of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, there's a little signal, but this is mainly jammed up here in the northern Great Lakes region, southern Ontario. And just to kind of take a look at New England, between now, that switched to the 06Z. This is between now and just the next 10 days, guys. I mean, no shortage of snow up here. If you live up here, winter will be raging on, no doubt about it. Will you get a little bit of snow down to Boston, New York City? Boston, I would say, yeah, you'll probably get into the mix of some of these Clippers. New York City, not as much probably. Can't rule out some rounds of light snow. But you live in the interior New England area, no shortage of winter up here. But, just kind of breaking down the pattern, it's very hard to explain because we don't know what's going to happen. Here's that upper low that'll kind of hit that cold air source right here, this blob of blue, that's lower pressure. So that'll kind of merge here, and then a ridge dominates the country. This warmer colors, this yellow and orange color, that's a ridge. So you can tell why they're going for above average temperatures across the southern tier of the country, because we have this zonal ridge on top. Now we do have this cold air feed that kind of works in kind of right into here. Don't like pink for that. Right into here. So we get sort of this negative EPO, a little bit of ridging, a big spike in ridging up to Alaska. This dislodges some nasty cold air across the northern Rockies. But if you notice, it doesn't turn into a full-fledged trough that sort of digs down into this area. If you keep this going in motion here, it really bottles up the cold air just for the Pacific Northwest and the northern Rockies. And then here comes another shot of cold air about 6 to 7 days from now into the Northeast. But you notice this trough right here doesn't really dive down to the eastern U.S. That could change. This little trough feature could trend further across the eastern U.S. But this ridge, see this ridge right here? Let's see. This ridge just continues to dominate most of the lower 48. I mean, we got this trough setting up right here, ridging up here, but there's just, this ridge is just really digging some roots, I can tell you that. And you don't want, if you're a cold weather fan, you don't want it to dig roots for too long, and it's really hard to uproot it. But we get about 10 days out. This is when things get everywhere. Eventually, it has this trough kind of moving into the western U.S. This will bring more widespread cold across the western U.S. And eventually, this trough sort of enters the central U.S. past day 10. And maybe it cools down the central U.S. and even the southern tier of the country. But after that, it shows another trough diving down to the central U.S. But we've had some big flip-flopping here past day 10 on all ensemble guidance. And I mean, this is the GFS ensemble. It's totally different, right? The GFS ensemble it looks about the same about a week out. But once you get day 7 to day 10, it really wants to just drop the Arctic hammer, this huge trough across the western and even central U.S. Like, this is a huge cold air dump into the western U.S., even the central U.S., with a big, basically storm track going just like that, ridging, still flexing over the eastern U.S. So, but you compare that with the Euro ensemble, and I knew it was going to do that. But you compare that with the Euro ensemble and around the same time frame. So we look at that, right, compared to the GFS ensemble. That's a pretty big difference. Pretty substantial difference here. And we look at the Canadian ensemble, and it's kind of right in the middle. Shows a big cold air dump into the western U.S. past day 10. What does it do after that? Who knows? Anybody's guess. So, yeah, as far as temperatures, when you look at the Euro ensemble, we'll start off Friday, warmer than average temperatures, obviously in the reds, and then below average temperatures in the blues and greens. And you can tell, we'll get these shots of nasty cold into the northeast. Here's one this weekend, and then it'll be replaced with warmth. And the warm just stays for the southern tier of the country. Here comes some cold air across the northern tier of the country, nasty cold up here in Montana, but it doesn't really dig down. So it's wild. Like, the cold air cannot get over the higher elevations of the Rockies. So the central and southern Rockies stay warmer than average. Northern Rockies, cold. So you really need that cold front to really dig through the entire Rockies to get that shallow cold air across everywhere. But, we get into day 10, and it's just everywhere. You got cold air across the northeast, warmer across areas. Not very warm, but it's warmer compared to average across the middle of the country. Colder air continues for the western U.S., and then it just continues just to look odd. It's just everywhere. Colder than average temperatures, who knows, might come into the eastern U.S. But, if you look at the latest GFS ensemble, we compare it with this, with the GFS. I mean, in general, it's the same kind of look, but it is leaning towards more widespread cold out west. So it's a tough one, guys. I mean, it's a tough one to figure out. I think a lot of people are struggling with it, and I think we're going to continue to have some wild model swings until they latch on to the actual pattern coming up. And, I've been reading weather forums, Southern Weather, southernwx.com, by the way, guys, especially if you live in the Southeast. Definitely if you live in the Southeast. It's a great, phenomenal place to learn. I've learned a good chunk of my knowledge from this forum, from great people on there. They're talking about it. We can tip one way and then flood the entire lower 48 with nothing but warm air. Then we can tip the other way and we have another Arctic outbreak. So I think there's just going to be wild swings in February. But who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But if you ask me now, like, Mitch, are we going to have any more winter weather opportunities for the eastern U.S. and especially, obviously, the South? I got a lot of people that tune in from that area. I would say nothing anytime soon. For whatever reason, when we have an historic event, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's a major winter storm like this historic winter storm we just had across the Gulf coastline, there's always this weird kind of thing where people immediately start making up rumors that there's another one coming. It happens a lot in hurricane season. Immediately you start getting questions. Mitch, I'm hearing there's another hurricane coming. Mitch, I hear there's another winter storm coming in 2 weeks. It happens every single time, and you have to be like, and then you got that one person that'll say, they'll be like, Mitch, I thought you said there was another winter storm coming in February. I'm like, man, when did I ever say that? So I think people get their sources of where they get information from mixed up. It's a thing. It's not me complaining or anything. I just think that's just the way it is with the weather, but really with anything. Anyways, that's an update. We'll continue to fine tune this. We'll continue to talk about every single morning until we latch on to something that's looking impactful, if you will. So today's weather, wild stuff going on across the Northeast. There was a pretty powerful snow squall that produced thunder snow across the Buffalo area this morning. This is starting the weekend, but we still got these snow squall warnings ongoing right now. We got winter storm watches up for areas of the Adirondacks, the Tuckhill Plateau, some winter weather advisory south of Buffalo. Well, we continue just to get these rounds of moderate to heavy snow from these clippers. Winter weather advisories up for northern lower Michigan, the UP of Michigan, and we got some winter storm watches up for the southern Rockies of Colorado, northern higher elevations of New Mexico, and yeah, so As far as thunderstorms today, there is a risk of some thunderstorms in northern Arizona. That's about it. Risk of excessive rainfall. I don't see anything out there to worry about. So the southeast today, it's a beautiful day. We finally got that nasty rainstorm out the way from yesterday. It'll be very sunny for a lot of people. It'll warm on up. A lot of areas will reach the 60s today. So a very nice day. 60s will feel like the 80s compared to what we felt lately. But that's it for the southeast. Not a whole lot to speak on. Now, the northeast, we'll take a couple minutes on this. The rest of the snow squall kind of will continue to fall apart, but there is still a cold front associated with it. So temperatures will drop behind it. Could get going across Nova Scotia again. Then immediately back behind it, by the time we get to this evening, more snow begins to enter western New York out of Ontario. The northern counties of PA could get this. Some of the snow can make it all the way to New York City, but I think it'll snow just about everywhere tonight in New York State. This will eventually get into the southern sections of New England. This will take over Vermont, New Hampshire, and this will be some heavy snow overnight too. You'll go to sleep, whatever snow you still got left on the ground, and you'll wake up with a fresh coating of snow. And, the latest HRRR model wants to drop some heavier snow over Boston in the wee hours of the morning tomorrow morning. So we continue to get into tomorrow morning. This could try to get going here. And by the time we're into Wednesday morning, some heavier snow in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, down east areas of Maine. And then we'll start to get some bursts of heavier snow, maybe some snow squalls Wednesday morning into Wednesday afternoon that'll kind of just wisp their way across the northeast. And maybe some aggressive lake-to-lake connection as far as some lake effect snow bands from, look at this connection. Lake Huron, Lake Superior, across areas in northern Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Ontario, Erie, pretty wild stuff. So definitely just winter continues up here. You guys are kind of cut off from everybody else as far as the difference in weather. But snowfall expected between now and the next few days for certain areas. We got these graphics pulled up for you folks, but this is between now and 7 p.m. Thursday. Not a lot expected up here in northern Maine, but a few inches of snow. Bangor 1 to 3, 2 to 4 in Rockland, 2 to 5 in Machias. Hopefully I said that right. Jackman 1 to 2 inches of snow. Not a big event. The further closer you get to the down east areas of Maine and southern Maine and western, southwestern Maine, the more snow you get, but definitely not a big event by any means. Up here in the Adirondacks and the higher elevations and just interior New England, more snow up here. This is taking a closer look at Vermont and New Hampshire. Several inches of snow expected in both states. Southern sections of Vermont, several inches. Brattleboro 3, Manchester 6, Bennington 4. And this is between now and 7 p.m. Thursday also. Several inches, over a foot in the Adirondacks, portions of it, especially further west you get, Tokyo Plateau, a ton of snow. But a lot of these areas, this is multiple rounds of snow. So this isn't just one storm. This is a few storms mixed with some lake effect snow. So definitely a lot of snow in this region. We take it into southern New England. Boston, they're calling for about 2 inches or less. So some accumulating snow. The Berkshires, several inches of snow is possible. Could get a dusting really anywhere across southern New England, Connecticut, Rhode Island, especially into Massachusetts. Certainly possible. So other areas of New York, Buffalo going for around 4 inches of snow. This is between now and 7 a.m. Friday. So this extends a little bit further out. Rochester around a half a foot. South of Buffalo, several inches. Someone can get another foot of snow between now and then. Going down to Binghamton, around 2 inches of snow between now and 7 a.m. Friday. Scranton, maybe an inch or less. Not expecting a whole lot of snow once you get to the southern tier into northern PA, but definitely just a little bit more snow to add to your total. Syracuse, not sure if I mentioned y'all, but 8 inches of snow is what they're forecasting between now and Friday morning. In New York area, not really much at all, but I did just want to throw y'all a bone. And then PA, Erie around 2 inches, so not a whole lot from this. Typically y'all are the breadwinner with these events. But just 2 inches of snow between now and the morning of Friday morning. And this is everybody else across PA. And then Ohio, this is what you're looking at. Cleveland, about an inch or less between now and Friday. Getting to the northeastern portions of the state, you might run a higher risk of some accumulating snow. So the south central U.S. will continue to get some rain showers in eastern Texas into Louisiana. And then we get into the overnight hours and moisture will be on the return. And then we'll wake up tomorrow morning to the start of a severe weather day. Not expecting a big day of severe weather as of now. but we'll see if that uptrends. But today's weather into tonight, pretty quiet. Up here in the north central U.S., another clipper rides in. So by the time some of you folks watch this video in the UP, could be snowing again, and this will drop some heavy snow. For my folks up here in the UP, a few to several more inches of snow will be added on with this, and this will make it all the way into lower Michigan, all the way into southern Ontario. And then that'll move through, and then cold air will follow, and then we'll get these lake effect snow bands that will come off and be enhanced off Lake Superior. And these will make it all the way down to the northern sections of lower Michigan. So add even more snow. So just multiple rounds of snow. And then we'll wake it up tomorrow morning to this solid lake effect snow band in the eastern half of the UP. And there could be a lake-to-lake connection all the way down into lower Michigan with this too. So and then here comes another clipper right behind that. That'll be a little bit further north though as the ridge begins to flex to the north. But snowfall between now and some of this has already fell, a lot of this maybe, but didn't want to show Duluth. This is how much snow you're expecting between now and 6 a.m. Wednesday. But some of this is still has not fell yet, as we'll get the banding features that'll move in behind this. But this is what you're looking like out of the Duluth area. And then this is the UP of Michigan between now and 7 a.m. 7 a.m. Wednesday. Several inches of snow. Definitely the eastern sections of the UP of Michigan, more snow. Many areas could go over a half a foot of snow. So a lot of snow to come. And then when we get into lower Michigan, this is what you're looking like. Gaylord 2 to 4. Beaver Island 4 to 6. I wonder who lives out there. But anyways, just a few to several inches of snow in this area. And we'll take it all the way down to Detroit. Detroit can get an inch or less. Bad Axe, 1 to 3 inches of snow. Flint, inch or less. A couple areas just to mention there. The western U.S., it's quiet besides this little spin, this upper low down here in Arizona. This will drop some lower elevation rain, higher elevation snow. And this will continue just to spin away. Could bring some heavier snow up into southern Utah, into southwest Colorado. And then by the time we're getting into tomorrow, I think the moisture will be more on the increase with this. And we'll start to just continue to get this kind of spin of moisture. But the northern and central Rockies, the Pacific Northwest, pretty quiet. Temperatures in the eastern U.S., this is what I mean, how the Northeast is kind of cut off. I mean, you guys have this very brutal cold Arctic air up here, but once you get into the mid-Atlantic, I mean, we start to get into the 50s. Maybe even someone hits 60 degrees in Virginia today. And look at the middle of the country. I mean, deep into the 50s. I mean, so it's pretty nice weather across most of these regions. And some of these areas are showing cooler temperatures than I think they'll actually will be. I think some of these areas get deeper into the 50s than what it's showing. But this is the western U.S. Above average temperatures for everybody. The only area that might stay below average temperatures is the folks being directly impacted by this upper low. But this is definitely warmer than average temperatures across most of the western U.S. That's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. Appreciate the people that continue to tune in. Obviously the views have dropped significantly. I think I mentioned in yesterday morning's video that we're just going to really inch our way to 100K. I made a joke to one of my buddies earlier this week saying if we were covering that winter storm from last week for the South, one more day we would have hit 100K. If it would have hit Wednesday instead of Tuesday, I would have hit 100K. But obviously people stop tuning in when the high impact weather isn't affecting their area, and I get it. But just thank you for the people who continue to tune in regularly. The views have definitely dropped day by day since we've gotten further and further away from that historic winter storm. But appreciate people who continue to tune in, who make this part of their routine. And, we'll get to 100K when we do. I'm not really thinking about it a whole lot, to be honest with you. Some people are probably just like, nah, that ain't true. But I found myself thinking about it a little bit yesterday afternoon. And then I was like, you know what? It'll happen when it happens. So appreciate y'all. Thank you for everything. And I'll talk to you again tomorrow morning. God bless.